I begin to uh, schedule my calendar. This is right at the beginning of 2020. And I begin to schedule revivals, begin to get excited about this next season of life. And I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be awesome. So I'm going to go full time evangelizing. So I'm starting to gear down my tenure there at Calvary. They just changed their name. It's now Calvary Worship Center. And I begin to gear down my tenure there. And as I begin to gear it down, I actually I decided I'm going to go on a little vacation and before all of this starts. And I went to Hawaii and I'm sitting, this is funny, I'm sitting on the beach in Hawaii. And as I'm sitting there, some people walk by. I'm just watching the waves. It's just a great moment. Some people walk by and they say something like, "Man, have you heard about this COVID mess that's happening right now?" Not talking to me, but just talking to each other as they're walking by. And I'm thinking to myself, "COVID? What is COVID?" And they're just they just kind of walked past. And I didn't gather much more out of their conversation other than that they said something like, yeah, they may start shutting things down. I think, shutting things down, what does that mean? And so I didn't think much more about it until later on in the week that I started hearing more and more about this COVID thing. And when I got back to the States, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, because there's no more toilet paper, there's no more water on the shelves. People are starting to
Yeah.
panic. And I'm thinking, oh my Lord. And so I begin to see the news and begin to hear all this stuff happening, and all of a sudden COVID sweeps in and it starts shutting things down slowly, slowly, slowly. And by the time March rolled around, I was supposed to go evangelizing full time. I was supposed to leave, I think it was the second week of March. The weekend that I was supposed to branch out, launch out full time and do evangelism was the first weekend everything shut down. Everything shut down. Just, you remember, everybody remembers. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my Lord, God, if this is really you, you're going to have to make a way here. You're going to have to do what I cannot do. Because if you're an evangelist and a pandemic hits and your phone starts ringing and it's a pastor on the other end, you really don't want to answer it because churches are shutting
Yeah.
down, everything's shutting down. And answer, oh yeah, brother, we'll have you back in 6 or 7 years. We'll just reschedule it. I'm thinking, oh Lord. And so I begin to get these calls and I'm thinking, okay, God, if this is really you, you're going to have to make a way here because I did what I felt like was your will. And so if this was your will, you're really going to have to make a way. And I also remember where God said in Malachi, he said, try me. And I said, okay, God, I'm going to try you. And so as everything started to shut down, as churches began to go online, as people began to panic, I said, God, if I'm really in your will, then I'm going to try you. And I began to try God and I began to send other evangelists
Wow.
offerings and I begin to increase my missions giving, begin to support more missionaries. I begin to give more than I've ever given before. And understand, I'm not telling you that to tell you what I've done. I'm just telling you that because I begin to try God, because I learned during that time that you can never outgive God. And if you're in the will of God, one of my friends, Jerry West, says, if it's God's will, it's God's bill. And I begin to learn that if I give God everything, he will take care of me. And as I begin to try him, I can fast forward and tell you right now, since I launched out into that full-time evangelism effort, I have not missed one weekend where I've not been in a pulpit somewhere. I realized that a lot of people were doing live recordings, and I did some recordings for churches, but there has not been a weekend that's gone by where I have not stood in a pulpit in front of people and ministered to somebody just because I learned I can never outgive God. And I said, God, if this is your will, I'm going to walk in it and I'm going to live in it. and God has blessed, and God has taken care of me ever since this pandemic started. And all glory and praise to Him. I've just learned that as long as I'm giving God what belongs to Him, He'll take care of me. And I encourage you, sacrifice opens the supernatural. When you learn to sacrifice and when you learn to give, God takes care of you. And since then, every time I've gotten to some kind of a financial tough spot, I've learned the way out of it is just to sacrifice. Whether that be fasting, whether that be giving more than I can really afford to give, whether that be, I don't know, just I've learned that sacrifice unlocks the supernatural. And sure, it's a walk of faith. Sure, there are tough times. Sure, there are times when I'm questioning, God, where are you right now? What are you wanting to do in my life today? Where are you wanting me to go? But there's never been a time that God has failed. And there's never been a time that God has not answered. And there's never been a time that He has not come through.